Of course, we're in a deficit because Labor in power, because Labor have never been the positive, I don't think. I'm being
Yeah, right.
sarcastic. $54 million ain't going to do much. A lot of people think that the more effort you put in, the more you're going to get out of it. Doing nothing is the best skill you can get in property investing. 99% of people in Australia that have got equity in the home, that equity is sitting there doing nothing for the rest of their lives. But the thing is, you don't want to pay off your mortgage, right? Paying off your mortgage is counterproductive and you don't want to do it. Elon Musk, the richest man in the world,
Yep.
he doesn't make any rent off his shares, but his shares go up. I literally make more money sleeping than working. Okay, guys, me and my team are about to go live, so make sure you grab your beverage of choice, sit down, and you're in for an amazing show. Hello and welcome to the Positive Property Show. Hello
Fabulous.
to my lovely
Awesome.
co-host, Belinda. Now,
Yay. Hey, George.
You're zooming in from Melbourne. I'm zooming in from Uluwatu in Bali.
Uluwatu.
Yes. Now, have a look at my background. That's actually inside the house that I'm in. They've
Yes.
what they've done, they've created all these little terrariums, and you can see Christina. You can see her in the background.
We can see you, Christina. There she goes.
Christina's already in the pajamas. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here, right? She's in holiday mode. We've got a big show today. Now, this is all about the budget, and I want to talk about the 3 key takeaways for property investors. And then I'm going to dive deep into what else it means for us and things like that, because they recently did the budget. Now, we're in a deficit, and of course we're in a deficit because Labor in power, because Labor have never been the positive, I don't think. It's one of those things. So one of the key things that they've done is they've actually got a crackdown on foreign investment.
Wow,
Right?
interesting. Yes.
Yeah,
very
so I'm actually a fan of this, funny enough, because foreign investment does push prices up, but the problem is it stops Australians from buying property and makes it too expensive. So I think that about time we actually did something to stop this. So what they're doing is basically foreign investors have been given a no vacancy sign, a 2-year ban on purchasing existing homes starting from the 1st of April.
Okay. So what does that mean in real kind of layman terms? Just
they can't buy properties unless they're brand new.
Oh, right. Okay. So I'm glad we elaborated. Fantastic.
And they're going to stop people from land banking. They're going to stop foreign investors from land.
Well, that's good, right?
Really, at the end of the day, so the tax department are investing $5.7 million to stop people from. You've frozen for me.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I can see you're a bit frozen there.
Am I the frozen one?
It's just it keeps it's buffering. It must be your internet.
$1 million to enforce this and $8.9 million to stop. Great, fantastic. That's really good, isn't it? I'm very pleased that this villa that I've hired, who's supposed to have amazing internet, is doing that. Christina, please get off the internet if you're doing anything, because I need the streaming power here.
Yep.
Okay, so the other good thing is they haven't stopped negative gearing or the capital gains tax discount.
Okay, that's good.
That's good news, exactly, because Labor are always talking about wanting to do this, but they haven't done it.
Yep.
And now also, Labor have decided to really tackle construction housing supply issues, and they're investing a massive $54 million into accelerate modern construction methods like prefabricated homes and 3D printing and things like that. I'm being sarcastic. $54 million ain't going to do much. The fact of it is, the government has got certain targets it wants to hit that it announced years ago, and it's missed the target every single month after month after month after month, just missed it over and over again. Now, there's going to be tax cuts for people that are earning between $18,000 and $45,000, and they're going to be dropping that from 16 down to 14% over several years.
Okay, so that means that's more of a tax cut?
More of a tax cut, yes.
Yeah, just making sure, just getting it clear, because there's
the government's going to be investing more into infrastructure as well. I think it's like 7.9 billion. If I'll look at the number here, infrastructure 7.2 billion. There you go. I was close. So what does that mean? Well, this one's an interesting one, because putting money into infrastructure is a good thing, right? However,
Yep.
when the government puts money into infrastructure, especially at times like this, it actually affects the cost of building properties because there's only a limited supply of people that know how to build things. And what happens is they're getting those people when they're going in and work for the government because they get a better deal than working for a builder, which means you've got to pay more to get your chippy and your bricklayer in.
Yeah, right.
Right. But that also is one of those effects. So the key takeaway is one, they've stopped the foreign investment, which is good, gives us Aussies a chance to buy properties instead without them inflating the price. And I think that's going to cool the market a tiny bit, which is what we want. We actually want the market to cool down a bit because as soon as interest rates went down, the market jumped straight away and people are jumping back in. And I'm always saying, look, I want the market to cool down enough for us and our members to be able to buy as many properties as we can.
That's right. That's what it's all about, right?
Well, the thing is, a lot of people get caught up in the wrong strategy. And I want to talk a little bit about that now we're talking about the budget. Because the budget's not going to make you or save you. What's going to save you is having a really good method and good system for creating wealth through property, right? And how do you choose the right way to do it? Because a lot of people think that the more effort you put in, the more you're going to get out of it. Does everyone sort of get that? Type in the chat if you thought that, because that's a good way to do it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people think that's going to work. That's because what happens is, think about it, in primary school, because schools were invented during the Industrial Revolution, right? And the reason they invented is because you had all these people that were peasants, and then you had dukes and all the nobles, and they were like going around having a good time and partying and womanizing while all the peasants had to work really hard, right? Well, then they started getting factories and they'd get the serfs out of digging hole, out of farming into factories. Problem was they weren't good at time management because they'd get up when the sun went up, they'd go dig a bit, have a bit of food, relax, have a chat, and just do their job. And when the sun went down, they were out, right? So the problem was, how do you get these people into the factory working and focusing and not chatting and collaborating and everything else like that? Because farming for the peasants, more collaborative effort. They'd have a chat and go, what are we going to do? Where are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? And work together as a team. But factory was really about putting one person in one spot doing one thing, then another person like a little robot. So what they did is they invented this thing called school. Because before that, people had an apprenticeship. So if your uncle was like a blacksmith, or your father was, then you could become a blacksmith. But unless you knew someone or were lucky, you couldn't be a blacksmith if your father was an olive picker, because you'd have to be an olive picker or know someone or get in there, right? It was hard to change occupations. And you didn't go to school, you just worked with them and learn the job and hands-on, right? So they invented schools and they invented, the recess, lunch, 3 o'clock and all that, and get people in so people would really respond well. And then when people went to the factory, they'd do the bell and people have morning tea and then they have lunch and get them working, right? And we're taught not to collaborate because, cheating was bad. It was banned. That's collaboration. Think about it. If you're working with the person next to you and cheating, you're not cheating, you're collaborating. But think about it in real life. Collaboration is the most important thing you can do. No one's become successful doing it on their own, but school teaches you to do it on your own. Don't cheat from anyone else. Don't help anyone else and help yourself. It's made to turn you to a worker drone and make you independent. So that way they could just get you working, because if everyone collaborated, well, maybe they wouldn't really become good worker drones. But also, we were taught to work hard, right? That was a value that they instilled into you, right? Through society, through everything. It seems, you work hard to get rewarded. If you want to get something done, you've got to work hard to put the work in. Now, to some extent, that's true. But it's counterproductive in many ways. And that's the thing. It's very counterproductive because, for example, if you're doing the wrong thing, working hard is not going to make it better, right? It's going to make it worse. So if you're supposed to be going north, but you're going west instead because you don't know what you're doing and you're going to work harder and go faster, you're going the wrong way even further. It's bad. So there's more taught than that. So then what people did, they extrapolated school and working hard with success, and saving. And, you probably know some people, I know some people, they work really long hours. They save, they don't spend money, and they keep saving and they work long hours, right? And they got all this money in the bank, but they've worked themselves to the bone. And by the time they retire, they're wrecked. Their joints are stuffed. They're mentally destroyed. They've got all this money in the bank that's been shrinking all their life, and they've got nothing, right? They forget how to live life. And I know a lot of people like that because a lot of people that came from overseas, they had the old mentality of doing that. I know some people that they won't go out for dinner. They'll eat dinner at home to save money. And then people go, okay, you want to make money out of property. All these people are making money out of property. What if I work harder? What if I buy a property and I renovate it myself, add value, then I can make more money? Or I subdivide and I develop, or I flip, or I do Airbnb and I manage it myself. So there's all these little ideas of doing everything yourself to try to add more value.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, you're not adding value a lot of the time. And maybe you're adding a little bit of value, but you're not maximizing the important part, because the key isn't you working harder and adding value, because that's not really it's not really passive income anyway, right? You're just giving yourself a job. And I've tried that. I've done it. I've renovated, I've developed, I've done all sorts of stuff. So I've tried it all. And when I was frustrated, I wasn't getting the results. When I looked at the most successful people in real estate, what I discovered is they, most of the time, did nothing.
Yeah, wow.
Right? What they did is they had the strategy right. They knew where to buy, how to set it up. And what they did is they made everyone else do the work, right? They had their lawyers, their accountants, property managers, everyone else doing everything. And all they did is do the work of actually controlling the deal, buying it, and then did nothing. Because to make money in real estate, all you got to do is buy the right property and then do nothing. Doing nothing is the best skill you can get in property investing. And it's counterproductive.
It sounds crazy hearing it out loud, to do nothing to be successful. But it's
yes.
obviously you're deep diving this
but
into a bit.
you've got to get the right property though, and the right structure, right? So
You need the
if you get the wrong
structure and the
property,
strategy.
if you
Yes.
get the wrong property and doing nothing, you're losing money, it's going to really suck, right? But you get the right property, and then do nothing. That's the key, because inflation is going to beat you. You can't outwork it. You can't outsave it. It's not going to happen. It's too big. So the only way to do it is, what you got to do is, don't look at what the poor people are doing. Look at what the rich are doing, because they leave clues. The rich, what they do is they outsource everything to create leverage, because without leverage, you've got nothing, right? And when you think about it, how do we get leverage? Well, what we do is we get our capital when our property goes up. We've got equity. We can leverage that equity and use the equity. 99% of people in Australia that have got equity in the home, that equity is sitting there doing nothing for the rest of their lives, doing nothing. And they've got this massive asset, but because they don't know how to use it, it's like you've got a genie sitting there, but you don't know that you can rub the lamp and get the genie to build a property portfolio for you, but you're just not doing it, right? They don't know. And instead of using their equity and using it to build all this wealth, they're going to work trying to pay off their mortgage, right?
Yeah.
The number one people say to me when they first meet me and know that I'm in property is, they're like, I want to pay off my mortgage. That's everyone's number one wish. Most people, if they got a genie, they'd rub the genie and go, pay off my mortgage, right? But you don't want to do that.
Now it's paid off. Now it's paid off. You've got an asset. And I mean, but where's your cash flow? It's not replacing your income.
But the thing is, you don't want to pay off your mortgage, right? Paying off your mortgage is counterproductive, and you don't want to do it. You want to pay off your mortgage, but not you, right? Did I pay off my mortgage? No.
You want to create leverage.
My tenants paid off my mortgage for me. That's the key, right? So your number one goal shouldn't be to pay off your mortgage. Actually, if you haven't done it already, your number one goal should be to replace your income through property. That should be your number one goal. Passive income. So if you earn 100 grand, get enough properties that you get 100 grand coming in every year without you having to work. If you earn 200 grand, get enough properties to do 200. If you earn 50 grand, 50, whatever it is. That should be your number one thing. And then change that goal of paying off a mortgage to, well, I want my tenant to pay off my mortgage. And then change the next goal to, I want my tenants to pay off all my mortgages. Get them doing it. You should be paying any of them off. Because
get them doing the heavy lifting. That's what you want, heavy lifting.
You're one person, right? Don't work yourself to the bone. Be smart, work smarter, not harder. And then what you do is you actually get the taxman, the tenant, inflation, and all the circle of safety. They're going to pay off your mortgage for you. And that's a smarter way to do it. You know,
Absolutely.
I literally make more money sleeping than working.
That's the way to do it.
And
are we listening? Are we listening to this, kids? That's what we're here to learn. We had a few wine glasses being raised. Love it. Thank you, Ten.
Look, and you know, I'm not saying that to impress you, but to impress upon you, because this is so important. Because when you replace your income through property, then you make more money when you sleep than when you work. And that's a very powerful place to be, because that gives your unconscious a lot of security, a big sense of security. And then it allows you to be creative with what you want to do in life, right? Because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be living in Bali for 6 months, because I wouldn't think it's possible. I wouldn't have the prosperity thinking that I can just do this. But when you've got money coming in, you can do whatever you want to do, and you'll be more creative doing what you want to do. It's great. So the hard work part, the beginning of the equation, you need to work hard, you need to save, you need to hustle, you've got to do whatever it takes, right? You've got to really work hard. And then once you build your assets, then let the assets do the work. You know, that's what we want to do. That's the key. So someone said, how long would it take to earn 100,000 passive income annually through your program? Good question. I'll give you the rough ideas, because it depends on what you mean by annually, right? No, but the offset works well. Yes, it does. So put it this way. I recently caught up. Yeah, that's okay. We'll get there. Doesn't matter. I recently caught up with some of our members some of our clients in Queensland, Gold Coast.
Just recently for our member meetup.
Yeah. We spoke to one lady, and she bought a property, and she doesn't own it yet, and it's already gone up over 100 grand. Right?
Perfect.
So Damien's saying, how long would it take to earn 100,000 passive income? She made 100 grand, and she doesn't even own the property yet. So it took her less than a year.
Yeah. So Philip's come in saying, but rental isn't paying your mortgage, but the offset is.
I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
I want to talk about this, because income is capital growth. That's income. And so is rent. A lot of people get confused because they think rent's income, but capital growth's not. Same thing. If you make 100,000 capital growth, or you make $100,000 rent, it's the same thing. That's the way you got to think about it. Because Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, he doesn't make any rent off his shares, but his shares go up, right? So what the rich do is they make capital growth, and then what they do is refinance. So that way they get a tax deduction and use their money. What the poor do, they make capital growth, they sell the property, pay capital gains tax, pay income tax, whatever it is, and then blow it, and then they've got nothing.
And then they blow it.
We do what the rich do. So the mortgage gets paid off by the capital growth and the rent. So that's the way to do it. Because what we're doing also, the tax department helps pay off your rent as well, of your mortgage as well. Because each property you're getting $80,000 tax deduction of depreciation. That's going into your mortgage as well. And that's the beauty of it, of doing it this way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's pretty powerful. So the thing is, the budget each year doesn't have a big effect on what we do in most years. Some years it has bigger effect. Philip saying you can't pay the mortgage or capital growth. Yes, you can. You refinance. Absolutely. your mortgage shrinks. So what people have to understand is whatever your mortgage is now, when you look back at it in 10 years, it's nothing. It's very small. It shrinks. That's what you got to understand. My parents, they bought a house, it cost them 35,000. They had a mortgage on it for 20 grand. Now the house is worth 600,000. No, not 600, 800,000. 800,000. A million, probably a million now. Yeah.
It was always a million.
So that 20 grand mortgage is very small, right? That's the fact.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you look at all my houses, like I've got a house in Forestville that's worth 1.4 million. And the mortgage that I originally got on it, I paid it off now, but the original mortgage was 125,000.
Yeah, wow.
So even if I still had it, it doesn't matter. It's paid off.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's the fact. So,
for sure.
Go.
I was going to say, first of all, we had a thing saying, but rental doesn't pay the mortgage. But the whole idea is, I think Phil,
it does.
He's got an 800,000 mortgage and he's getting 4,800 per month. Rental is almost half. That just sounds like it's the wrong strategy, the wrong property.
Basically, with a property, you're going to get around about 5.5% return. So an $800,000 property is going to give you $40,000 rent.
Yep.
That's going to go up by around 7% per year. That's the part you got to understand. Your mortgage is not going up, but your income's going up, your equity's going up. So it works out.
Yep. And as someone said, one of our lovely members, investing is a long-term game. Someone's
how many
written
properties can you own in one state?
One state.
It depends on the state, depends on the structures. So it's all very different, right? Because the fact of it is you got to look at your land tax. And what I like doing really at the end of the day, especially if you're starting out, you want to get one property maybe in Brisbane, then one in Adelaide, then one in Perth, then maybe one in Melbourne, because the 7 o'clock market's moving. And what we do is follow the market around the country. And as we go along, we go to different markets because we want to get the most growth. And we just keep going. And then by the time we come back, so let's say you started in Brisbane and we go all the way through to Sydney, and then suddenly we're back in Brisbane, your property in Brisbane has doubled by then in about 7 years' time, 7 or 10 years when we get back. And then we go through the whole market again, right? So if you look at Victoria, for example, right? Victoria is now actually good buying. You know how for a long time I've been saying Melbourne, Victoria is terrible because it was. But you look at Victoria, you look at Melbourne, it's similar to Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth, the price.
Yeah, it depends where you're looking though, George. I live here in Melbourne.
No, I get that. I'm not talking Port Melbourne where you live, right? Right?
Yeah, but no. But the surrounding suburbs all the way through to Berwick.
Yes.
I mean, that's nearly an hour and a half.
But what I'm saying is whenever the gap is very small, that's when we go in. Because the reason we went to Perth, for example, is Perth and Sydney were almost the same price about 15 years ago. And then Sydney was much higher than Perth. So what do? We all went and bought in Perth. What's happened to Perth? It's caught up. Catching up. Hasn't caught up yet, but it's catching up. And what you got to do is look at that. And Melbourne at the moment is underperformed.
Yeah,
one of those things.
You're finding here in Melbourne as well, a lot of the big investors are selling off their properties because of the COVID land tax.
Yes. So big investment in Melbourne is bad, right? Because you own too many properties, the land tax is going to kill you. But having a few select ones is actually quite good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but Sydney's still expensive. Sydney and Canberra are still up there. So.
Is it possible to get a double figure rental yield to be positively geared from day one,
yes,
then repeat?
It is, but you don't want that. But it is, absolutely. You can get a double figure rental yield, but there's always a trade-off. Depends what you're looking for. If you want a big rental yield, you can get one. But if we had a property with big rental yield and one with a normal rental yield that had capital growth, then in 10 years' time, the one with the normal rental yield will be giving you more rent. Because big rental yields don't grow. They're already big.
They're already big.
Yeah, they don't grow. That's the thing. What you want is something that can grow, because you really, it's all about the growth. What you want really is you want your property, you want the equity to grow, you want the rent to grow. You want those two things to grow. So you don't want to get a property where that's going to be stagnant. That's the worst. I've had people join our program who have bought properties 10 years ago, and basically they haven't gone up in 10 years. Why? Because they were the wrong property. The rent didn't go up, it actually went down, the property value went down. So you really got to get the right property. We say properties double every 7 or 10 years, but you've got to get the right one, because if you get the wrong one, it's not going to work. So that's it for our live. Thank you for joining us. And now we're going to go into our private group and have a chat with our private members.
Thanks for being here,
Thank you.
guys. Welcome. See you next week.